Okay, so, okay, all right.
You are recording, yes.
So it's saying it's recording, but I don't know. Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of Back on Track. This program is, as you know, is designed to assist students who are currently on academic probation. Our intent is to provide students with the kind of information to help you get back on track and be able to be successful in completing your degree. Today or this morning, we have a wonderful program for you with presentations from both financial aid as well as our academic advisors. And so without any further ado, I am going to turn this morning's program over to Dr. Marrero, who will then introduce our special guest this morning. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barlow. My name is Dr. Ana Marrero. I'm the Assistant Director here at the Intersection, and we are very excited to have you back for day 2. We've had a lot of questions from our students in all the work that we do with them about what happens when I find myself on probation, and what does that mean when I have a scholarship or financial aid, or I'm on the millennial. How does that look like for me? So I know that we're going to have lots of great questions and lots of great information from our presenters today. I would like to take a moment to introduce you to Ms. Natalie Gutierrez. She is the one who's made all of this possible. She is a member of the MSI Student Council, and she had come up with this idea of, can we have a seminar that deals with how to get back on academic good standing for students? This was part of her project as an MSI student representative, and I'm just going to allow her to take a few minutes to introduce herself and tell us what her passion was in doing this. Miss Natalie?
Thank you so much, Dr. Ryan, for the introduction. I want to say thank you to everybody who's here today, and good morning. I'm a first-generation student. My first language was not English. Throughout my life, I have found myself in homes shared with about 10 family members where days were hectic and everywhere was a shared space. So I'm introducing myself in this way, not because these parts of me define me, but because these are some of the things that at many points in time made me struggle with academics, that made me question my own abilities, and they're things that I really had no control over. Now that I'm at UNLV, I found my rhythm, and I also found myself as part of the Minority Serving Institution Student Council. The mission of this council is to design and maintain institutional support systems to promote educational success for students of color and other underrepresented students in higher education. So before having served on this council, I knew that I wanted to succeed. I knew that my peers also do, or else we wouldn't all be here. However, I also knew that a lot of times that success might feel out of our control, and especially when higher education is an entirely foreign environment. For this reason, this program was designed with the intention of resolving a lot of those challenges, or addressing those challenges for students who might have questions about how the university does have programs or policies in place that can help you. Today's session will be focusing on those policies and the different resources on campus that are available for students. So I want to say thank you for the speakers and for the students that are here today. And I am passing the mic on to our speakers.
So our first speaker for today is Mr. Zach Goodwin. He is from the Financial Aid Office. Mr. Goodwin, if you could take a few minutes and tell us about yourself, please.
Of course. And first of all, thank you so much for having us here. Sometimes people really don't want to talk to us. Our office is usually a source of stress, even if everything is fairly simple. So I'm really glad just to have the opportunity to demystify some things about aid and talk about how our aid office can be a source of support, not just a source of stress. I have myself just been at UNLV for about 4 months, so I'm pretty new to the office. But I'm already just so impressed at efforts like this event today and yesterday. just the kind of support that the university tries to show for its students and such a wonderful and diverse community. And it's wonderful to be someplace that celebrates that. So with that, I will launch in. Am I able to share, Dr. Monroe?
Yes, you are.
It will let me. Okay. If you'll give me just a second. Can you all see the presentation? It would also help if I didn't start at the end of the presentation. Let's start at the beginning is a better spot. This is a fairly dry topic, I admit, but I want to be sure, just as Natalie put so well, as people face a lot of challenges during their academic career and how many of those are not even within your control, just to be sure you understand what satisfactory academic progress policies are from a financial aid perspective so that you're better able to navigate it, better able to communicate with us about what's happening so that hopefully we can be a better source of help for you. I'm probably just going to refer to this as SAP through the presentation because satisfactory academic progress gets hard to say over and over again. SAP is really a financial aid term that is a regulatory term, and it's also set in federal law, specifically as applies to federal aid. And the reason I want to be clear that this is a federal law, federal financial aid kind of term is that it may or may not always be consistent with academic policies. For the most part at UNLV, to my knowledge, they are generally consistent, but I'm not going to claim in my 4 months here to know what every program is doing. So please know that this relates specifically to financial aid, and so it may be slightly different than your academic program. The premise under federal law is that if you're receiving financial aid, it is ideally to get you to complete whatever program it is that you are in within some kind of specific time frame, so that aid is not a perpetual thing. It is meant to get you to that completion and in a certain amount of time. And so if we're going to complete a program in a certain amount of time, obviously you have to progress, so to speak, at a certain pace to get there by that point in time where you can successfully complete the program. So that you have it, I did put a URL here, and I did send some handouts to Harriet earlier today so that that can be distributed. This is where you can find the full policy on the UNLV website. This is a simplified version of it. And honestly, it's going to tell you whatever you're going to find in that. But if you really want to look at the whole few pages and read it out, by all means do. It's there for you to refer to. And why does this policy matter? Since people are expected, if they're receiving federal aid, to maintain a certain pace of progress through their program, it doesn't necessarily take much to derail that progress. I'll talk a little bit later in the presentation about sometimes all it takes is one tough term, and that can throw things off. And SAP policies at the federal level have a few different components that we'll talk about shortly. And all it takes is for one of those components to be off, for one requirement not to be met, and then eligibility is at risk for federal aid. And although I know I keep referring to federal aid, I want to throw out there that most university aid is also tied to SAP policies as well as some state aid. Even some outside scholarships might require students to be making satisfactory progress. So it is actually a little bigger than federal aid, but the policy is rooted in our federal compliance efforts. So with that, let's talk about the three elements that you would need to know about. First, PACE, your GPA, and how many credits you have attempted or maximum credits allowed for a program. First, looking at PACE, we often call it at UNLV completion rate, which honestly I think is a better term. PACE is the federal term. Really all it means though is the portion of all of the courses you've attempted that you successfully completed. And what we mean by successfully completed is that you earned a passing grade. So anything like a withdrawal, or if you took an incomplete, those are considered not completed when we are calculating completion rate. This is going to look at your full academic history. So that does include things like transfer credits that you may have brought in. If you change major partway through your program, we're still going to be looking at those credits from your old major that might not even apply today, unfortunately, for better or worse. Our completion rate at UNLV that's required is currently 70%. And just to give you, this is just a mathematical example for you on the slide, that if you take 15 credits of courses, which would be a lot, but that's 5 classes probably. If you complete 4 out of those 5, you will have a calculated pace of 80% or completion rate of 80%. So it really is that straightforward in terms of how we'll calculate that. GPA is even more straightforward, of course. For undergraduate students, the minimum cumulative GPA is a 2.0, and for grad students, a 3.0. This also is cumulative, just like I mentioned with PACE, we're looking at that full academic history. The same is true here. I should also note, when I say cumulative, I should have thought to mention it on the last slide, that also means if you were at UNLV 15 years ago and had to take time away and are now coming back into your program, what you did 15 years ago is still going to count for SAP purposes. Again, for better or worse. Most of this is set by the feds. So we're stuck a little bit. We have some discretion, but not a ton, unfortunately. Maximum credits is kind of speaks for itself in terms of what we mean when we talk about it, but you can probably recall at the beginning when I mentioned that the expectation federally is that students will complete their program in a certain time frame. And when we talk about time frame, what we're actually talking about is not calendar time, but rather how many credits you attempt, whether you pass them or not, sort of like a maximum number of courses that you can take. I'm assuming, at least I understand, most of you in attendance today are undergraduate students. So for a bachelor's program, the maximum amount of credits that you can take and still receive federal aid would be 186. So here we're looking at total credits, not total time. And that's an important distinction too, because that does mean if you are coming part-time to UNLV, it does not matter how many years it might take you, at least from a financial aid perspective, to finish that program. You can continue to receive aid through that point in time till you're done. That's one reason that looking at credits is actually a helpful thing, not a hurtful thing, so that you can progress at your own pace, whatever is going to work for you. So those are those 3 elements. This might be a good pause point. How would you like to take questions, do you think? We can wait till the end. There are some built-in stopping points like this, if we'd like to take them during.
We have just had answers in the chat, like students will ask questions in the chat, but I appreciate the time that you have that when you pause in and see if you have any questions. So attendees, students, staff, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Zach will let us know when we have other pauses throughout if you have any burning questions.
Thank you, Dr. Marrero. And I, as a word to the wise, I can't see the chat. So if something pops up, please let me know. So I want to be sure and address the question. Thank you very much. So those are the 3. Oh.
Yes, we actually do have a question.
Oh, wait.
We have a few. So the first one is, I have heard that audit is better than withdrawal for completion rate. And the second one is, how does financial aid differ from part-time to full-time?
Great questions. For audit purposes, I feel like in financial aid, the question is never just a straightforward yes or no. It's always some convoluted thing. And this is really no different here. Financial aid, at least federal aid, cannot be applied to an audited course. But at least to my understanding, we're not counting audited courses in our SAP review. I say that with a grain of salt because I'm sure there are things I haven't learned yet at UNLV. But yes, a withdrawal on your academic transcript is treated as a course you didn't complete, whereas an audit is treated as sort of a course that doesn't apply at all. So we would be ignoring the audited course, whereas a withdrawal would count toward that PACE calculation as a course you didn't complete.
Nice, thank you. And the second,
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The second question was, how does financial aid differ from part-time to full-time?
There are a few contingencies here too, of course. If you are a recipient, for example, of a federal grant, like the federal Pell Grant, the simplest way to put it would probably be that those grants are in fact prorated based on your enrollment status in a way that I think is fairly logical. If you're enrolled full-time, you would receive the maximum of grant that you're eligible for. If you're enrolled half-time, it's generally about half that maximum grant, and so forth. So that will prorate based on whether you're less than half-time, three-quarter time, full-time. For federal student loan purposes, one of the requirements of those programs is that you are enrolled at least half-time, which for undergrads would be 6 credits. For grad students, it's 5 credits. So if you are enrolled in fewer than 6 credits as an undergraduate, you would actually not be able to receive federal student loans at all. If you are somewhere between half-time and full-time, believe it or not, it's really based on your overall cost to attend. There is no half-time maximum and full-time maximum. It's just the same annual limit that applies to everybody. So you might actually be able to borrow the same amount, whether you're half-time or full-time. Not that I'm encouraging you to borrow if you don't need it, but it still might not change the actual amount. The nice thing about that is that if you are using something like a student loan to help you with living expenses, not just paying us, but also helping pay yourself, you can pay your rent and go shopping for food, etc. That again, that amount won't change just because you are enrolled in fewer courses. The annual limit is the same.
Beautiful. Thank you. Those are all the questions we have at this time.
Wonderful. I'm still going to check on that audit question though. That's a great question. And this is, I was going to mention this later in the presentation, but maybe I'll mention it now since this question kind of spurred me to think about it. We are actually in the process at UNLV of reevaluating almost every aspect of our SAP policies. As I said before, a lot of this is dictated by the Department of Education and by law, so we only have so much discretion, but there are elements where we do have a little discretion. And some of the things that we have been doing at UNLV are not quite as friendly as I would like. So although I make no promises, I at least can promise you that all of these things are being reviewed in the hope that we can, again, really use this as a tool for success and not as a tool that just gets in people's ways. So fingers crossed on that. Feel free to advocate. I'll pass word on to, to leaders in support.
Yay. Thank you.
So what happens with SAP? So we sort of know the things that we're looking at. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the process that we go through for those reviews. So we will review SAP status after every term that a student attends, even if they're not receiving federal aid, technically. Sometimes maybe someone doesn't need it for a term. We're still going to be looking at it because it will affect future eligibility. And at each of those reviews, we will look at all 3 of those elements. So we'll calculate what a student's completion rate is. We will look at cumulative grade point and the number of credits total that they have attempted while they're at UNLV. So all 3 of those will be looked at every term. If a student is away for a term or 2, in this example that I gave, this would be a student who was here in the fall but decided they needed to take spring off and come back in summer. The review we did at the end of fall, which was the last time you were enrolled, will then apply when you come back. It would be true if there was a year off, we'd still be looking at the last review and applying it to the time you come back. So it just sort of carries with you forever. Technically, under the law, as soon as any of these requirements is not met, because as I said, unfortunately, even if just one of them isn't met, technically speaking, that federal aid eligibility is lost. But here's something that I really appreciate about what UNLV does, is that we make use of a federal flexibility called warning period. What this really means is if you fall out of good standing for federal aid purposes or financial aid purposes, there is sort of an automatic reprieve of 1 term of continued coursework where you can continue to receive aid. You don't have to do anything to be able to do that. We're going to reach out to you and say, hey, we noticed your grade point has fallen below that required 2.0. You can continue to receive aid for one additional term with no action needed on your part. So this is a little bit of a time buyer. If you had, I mean, as I said before, it doesn't necessarily take much to jeopardize that aid. So this is a nice way to buy a little bit of time so that hopefully you can bring yourself back into good standing. The only exception to this is the maximum credits. Actually, federal law is really strict on this. Very technically speaking, as soon as we know you can't complete your program within that maximum number of credits, technically a student loses eligibility. Thankfully, it's really hard to figure that out well in advance. So usually when it happens is when we see someone approaching it. If someone has already reached 186 credits as an undergraduate, they immediately become ineligible. So there isn't a built-in warning period to keep taking classes beyond that maximum effectively. That doesn't mean, though, that you can't exceed the maximum. It merely means that you would have to submit an appeal to go beyond it. And this is what's called a probation period. So I mentioned already that warning period, that is just automatically provided to a student. So we'll review at the end of that warning term if a student still has not moved into SAP good standing. Again, doesn't mean that the door is closed. It just means now that students are required to appeal. If their status or the appeal of the status is approved, then you essentially gain one more term. And this is a little bit different when we talk about maximum credits. Let's say you need to get to, let's say, 190, for example. So 4 over that 186 maximum. If you appeal and it's approved, it means we're just saying you now have up to 190 and you would receive aid until you hit 190. So that always that max credits is a little bit special. So you can have your warning period. If you appeal and it's approved, then you can have that probation period and continue to receive aid. And again, the whole point of this is to allow for time to come back to good standing, because this is ultimately what we all want, is for students to be able to complete whatever program they are admitted to and working toward. We do generally require for a probation period that a student meet with an academic advisor to plan out what they need to do. Not at all meant to be a penalty or a challenge. It's really meant as just providing an additional source of support to help promote your success. Because we, of course, can't advise you academically, or we probably could, but you probably wouldn't want to hear our advice. Better you be speaking to the appropriate person about how to get where you want to be in the way that's going to work best for you. And they'll actually provide us a copy of that plan too, so we can see what your plans are moving forward. In fact, this might actually be a good pause point to have any questions popped up in the chat. Dr. Marrero?
No general questions in the chat yet, but I just did have one, which I'm sure you'll probably get to later on, is when that appeals process happens, what does that kind of look like? What does a student need to be aware of? Because sometimes we have students who come into our office who are already embarrassed, intimidated, and don't know what to do, what to provide, or what to talk about. So if you could just, kind of the scenario of what that might look like if you find yourself in the situation and what to expect after meeting with your academic advisor.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind me deferring that a little bit, I'm actually going to be talking about that almost immediately. So if that's the only question, that could not have been a better segue to the next section.
Beautiful. Thank you.
But before we do, though, I really want to stress not only the situation that you had confronted with your studies about just not having privacy, having people around you all the time makes focus extremely difficult. Just to reiterate that our office really is there to help you, not to hurt you. And we want to hear what's going on in your life. Speaking for myself, I had a terrible first year at college. I was really motivated to go, and I managed to graduate high school a year early, and then got to college and realized I was not at all socially ready for that environment. Maybe academically I was, but socially I was not. And I floundered a lot that first year, and I spent another year just digging out of that hole that I had made for myself. But was I at fault for that? Not really. I just wasn't prepared for it. And even another just general life stuff gets in the way. And especially if someone is early in their program, if it's your first semester or maybe your second or third, it doesn't take a lot to pull people out of SAP good standing. So with these examples, this happens actually quite a bit, especially in the first term. It's a huge adjustment to go to college, whether you're going right out of high school or you've taken time away before you come to college, or you've started college, gone away and come back. Whatever the case may be, that re-entry can really be challenging. Something could happen in life and you realize, you know what, I can't do my full-time course load. I'm going to drop 2 of my 4 courses. Well, now suddenly at the end of that term, it's going to look like your pace is 50%. And if that's your first term, you're immediately losing that SAP status just because of that one term. If you were struggling like I was and you took a couple of Fs, again, if it's early on, I know GPA is a special thing. It's easy to mess up and takes a long time to fix. So yeah, it's hard. And the point of all of this is really just to stress that we understand that. And the point is to help you get back on the path that you're trying to fulfill. Stuff like this happens, and it happens to all of us, whether it was within our control or not. And that's not really even the point, because it's not about judgment. It's about helping you get back on track. Hence the point of this these couple of days for you. So if you've had a warning term, didn't quite make it back to SAP status, you went through your appeals, that was successful, you had a probation term and you're still not there, that does not also mean in itself that that door is permanently closed. Technically speaking, you can continue to appeal ad nauseum. And it does happen. And in fact, I often encourage it, believe it or not. And I'll talk to you a little bit more in a moment as to why. And although, again, we can't ever guarantee approval of an appeal, we do really want to support you. And I'll talk in a second about what really makes a strong appeal, sort of the things that we want to hear effectively. Not that I'm trying to coach or anything, but I am also trying to coach, because SAP is about a particular kind of thing. So we want you to succeed. To actually go through the appeal process on our forms page on the website, there is a SAP appeal form. Our forms are generally uploaded through the MyUNLV Self-Service Help Center. They're actually implementing some things right now that will make it easier to tell us that that's what you are submitting. I think right now it becomes other form or something like that. So it will be a little more specific so we can immediately catch that if it's submitted. I didn't put it on the slide, but generally speaking, we have a deadline each term. So if you weren't making SAP, let's say, going into next fall, this coming fall, 2021, usually we will set a deadline of about halfway through the term. So I think it's October 15th or something like that for this fall that you have to appeal to receive fall aid. And I stress that because once fall starts, it doesn't mean you're just out of luck. There is still time to try to address it with us and work with us on it. The biggest thing that we're looking for is just, again, we understand stuff happens, and we would like to know when you're completing that form what it was that got in the way of your academic success for that period of time, whatever it was, and that steps are being taken to move forward from it. Honestly, it really is about that simple. I already mentioned the academic advising piece, but if there is any third party or other documentation you can provide to support your statement, that always helps. Not that this is a legal argument, but just like in a court of law, like the more people that can support you and vouch for you, the better chance you have of an appeal being approved. Because again, really all we want to know is something happened, steps are being taken to resolve it, and you have every reason to believe things will be better and work for you more effectively in the future. That's all. And if we have to do subsequent appeals, if we go back to that example of the 50% PACE person, or even the GPA of 1.0, it might take 2 or 3 semesters of coursework to bring yourself back up to a standard that would be consistent with the SAP requirements. It's not necessarily going to be able to happen in one term and you're done. So in those cases, although it might end up requiring a couple of appeals to get there, it also really helps your case if we see, oh, okay, yeah, this happened in your life and you needed to withdraw from a couple of courses, but you're not continuing to withdraw. Or, okay, you struggled this term and failed a couple of classes, but the grades moving forward have been good. So that kind of progress is in itself an argument. And we know mathematically that it just can't always happen in one semester or 2. Sometimes you need more time. And as long as we see that you're getting there, the chances are very good that that appeal will be approved. And then just some general recommendations. When you're planning out your program, whether it's your advisor or just in your own research, as I mentioned before, your coursework carries with you forever. So no matter how long you are gone, when you come back, all of that old stuff goes away. Sometimes there can be a case where from the academic side of the house that they'll work with the registrar to effectively do a retroactive withdrawal. So it's like the course just never existed when it comes to your academic transcript. Unfortunately, by law, we have to still treat it as if those courses are there, even though they're gone from your transcript. So that might help you from, say, a GPA perspective, perhaps if it was a rough term, because any grades are just not going to count toward your GPA, but it isn't necessarily going to solve other issues for you. So just important to remember that. And first and foremost, if you are struggling, really speak with your advisor about what course load is going to work best for you. I am very respectful of those who are very excited and gung-ho about their academic program and want to go full-time, but maybe life is just not going to let that happen in a way that allows you to best succeed. And maybe you need to be half-time for a couple of years. I know that pushes your goal a little further down the road, but also helps to ensure that you get there at that future time. So really think about that. There is nothing wrong with taking a shorter load. And sometimes, in fact, students, if they've run out of options financial aid-wise because of SAP issues, they might take a class or 2 classes and self-pay if that's an option for them, just to work to get themselves back to a point where it's clear they're making progress, where they regain that SAP status. So that I'm going to come back to that actually in a moment. Do talk to people outside of our office, but do please also talk to people in our office, preferably before you take any action, so that we can really work with you on what any possible consequences, negative or positive, might be about those choices. For instance, maybe if you're really struggling with a couple of classes and you are concerned that you will not pass those classes, depending on how other coursework has been, it might actually be beneficial to you to withdraw at that point and take those courses again later. In some cases, it might not really help you to do that. All kinds of considerations, but we want to be sure that whatever choice that you are needing to make, that you can make it as informed as humanly possible, so that you know what all of your options are. And among those options, I talk about the manageable course load. There are funds that are available. These are institutional dollars, so they're not federal or state funds. And therefore, we have a little more discretion over what we do with them. They are mostly need-based, so based on your financial circumstances. If you're struggling with SAP, and you really want to keep pushing forward and making progress, and you are making progress, talk to us about it. Again, it can't be something, unfortunately, that I promise, but if funds are available, we may still be able to help you with those courses, even if you are not making SAP. So I don't want you to think, I've had a couple of bad terms, I'm done. That is not true. Come to us, please. So kind of to conclude, I feel like mostly all the things I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth a little bit, and that here are all these limitations on what you can do, but we really want to help you. But they are both true, absolutely. But that isn't always a bad thing. Yes, these federal requirements are there. They do limit how much flexibility we can have or when aid can or can't be available to you. But especially early on, if you're pretty fresh to UNLV, if you are having a difficult time with coursework or life or whatever is going on, SAP sometimes actually helps alert us before an academic advisor even knows. But there may be a concern that we want to help you with. And that's another reason why I keep reiterating, don't be afraid to talk to us. We may know before anyone else there's a hard time being had. Are there things that we can do to help, or are there people we can refer you to who may be able to help you? Thinking about SAP 2, it might sound counterintuitive, but does help with financial planning as well, because it does kind of force you to think about and structure what next steps are going to be to try to reach that goal. And it's a very careful process, and that's good for your finances as well. It's very easy to kind of keep borrowing and keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. And before you know it, either you have just borrowed more than you feel like you can handle, or you've reached your lifetime limit, because there is a lifetime limit on a lot of student loans. And then there really is nothing we can do about it. That's the limit. And that is something we can't ever help you with. So then maybe if you need an extra term or two, if you've hit that limit, that's not an option anymore. There is a limit to how much Pell Grant a student can receive. If we hit it, we hit it. So kind of really forces that careful thought of, okay, if I need to do this many credits, how am I going to get there academically, but also how am I going to get there financially? So the SEP requirements also can just be a great stepping off point to having those conversations with us, so that we can be as supportive as possible. And the last time I say it, I'll promise, talk to us, please. Again, I know we're like the office no one wants to talk to. It's tough. It often is involving your families. It's your future. It's money. It's just everything that is sensitive in our lives. So just to stress that our team is very attuned to that and wants to help. Here's how you can reach me. I don't say this to discourage you from contacting me, but if you would like a faster response, because my email volume is pretty intense a lot of the time, we do encourage you to use self-service. I don't like that we call them cases, but to open up a case in self-service, because then anyone can at least start that conversation with you and get things moving forward. I hate to have people write me and then it sits until I can get to it. So either way, I just encourage you to reach out. We really do want to help. And Dr. Murr, have any other questions come in?
Yes, we just have something for you.
Sure.
We have one from Natalie. Is the lifetime limit based on an individual student need, or is there a number that is set for everyone?
The lifetime limit, it's funny. I love that idea. I wish the feds would think of that, of having it be associated with the student's need. And unfortunately, it is just a fixed amount that if you are what the feds would consider a dependent undergraduate, doesn't mean you're actually dependent on your parents. It's more about your age, honestly, than anything else. If you are a dependent, that maximum is $31,000. If you are an independent student, it's $57,500. And that is just fixed. And sadly, over the years, hasn't changed a great deal. I have been in financially, I'm almost embarrassed to say, I'm approaching 30 years. And I think that those limits have gone up by $2,000 or $3,000 in a 30-year period. So it hasn't exactly kept pace with the cost of life. Graduate students have other options that undergraduates do not. At the same time, a dependent undergraduate, their parent has options that an independent student or a graduate student wouldn't have, because the assumption is made that the parents are involved. But yes, those limits, that's a really long answer to say, yes, those limits are just set by law.
Perfect.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is going back to what I'm going to call alternate need. You had mentioned something about that if a student found that him or herself on, not making satisfactory progress, right? And therefore not able to get like their Pell Grant or whatever, that there may be a pot of money that could be accessible to that student. My question is how would they know that this pot of money existed for them to access, or how should they ask for it? Just how does that happen?
Yeah, and honestly, it's simpler than it may sound. It is truly just to contact us and ask. More to say, I'm currently not receiving, whether it's federal aid or my scholarship this term because of my SAP status. Are there any other need-based funds that might be available to me? Here's what's happening in my life. Usually this comes after a SAP appeal is not successful. Because of course, if they appeal and it's a yes, well, that kind of solves the problem there. If they appeal and the answer is no, and there isn't another option, it really is turning around and asking if there are any need-based funds that aren't contingent on SAP. We were kind of lucky this year because we used them rather freely this year. This specific pot that we're referring to, especially with COVID, just a lot of students were struggling just with paying their bills or paying us so they could continue their studies. And we just provided it. We didn't even wait for people to ask.
Okay, sure.
So some people did ask. We just did it for people this term. But by all means, if you appeal and it is not successful, as again, I've said it before, I know I can't promise any particular outcome, but I also would hate for someone to close the door on themselves.
Sure. So obviously you're suggesting that a student, number one, doesn't appeal. And depending upon what the outcome of that appeal would be to go back and request consideration for other funding. So would they do that request through this self-service or email or what?
It has its positives and negatives, but we always encourage using self-service.
Okay.
In great part for the reasons I mentioned a few minutes ago, that it helps ensure that gets routed to the right people as quickly as possible. I always think of the thing where something urgent has come up and you email someone and, that person's out for 2 weeks. And then, then they get back and there's a backlog and it's a month before you have a response. And by then it's too late. And I don't ever want that to happen.
Sure.
I'm building a little bit on your question, Harriet, but even if, let's say you appeal and it's successful and you do have aid, but there are other financial circumstances that are making it difficult either for you to pay your UNLV bills or to pay other bills, please also tell us that and we can guide you a little bit on the next step. Sometimes there are adjustments we're able to make federally also. That have nothing to do with SAP at all, but that are more about your financial circumstances. So,
Then I have one more question, and this has to because this financial aid primarily that we're talking about is as a result of students completing a FAFSA, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what may be out there for those students who did not complete a FAFSA for whatever reasons that may then find themselves on academic probation, and then obviously it's because they're not receiving federal aid, it's not necessarily coming up as not making satisfactory progress, but they're not making satisfactory progress because they're on academic probation. So what about that population?
And I assume you mean if someone in that situation now is finding that they need some help.
Yes,
So for them, it's kind of funny because yes, they weren't receiving aid, but we're going to look if they go complete that FAFSA. That's what we want them to do first. If it was an undocumented person or non-citizen, they can then use our alternate need form process. So either way, but just the funding sources would be different case.
Right.
For FAFSA purposes, they would need to complete it, and they might need to immediately appeal. Warning would generally not apply unless maybe it was just like one bad term, but then we probably would have to say, okay, this was a difficult term. That's kind of, you already had your warning time. So
Sure.
We might have to require an immediate appeal, maybe not, but probably. So they would want to maybe be prepared for that or proactively submit those appeal materials so that we can consider them right off the bat.
Okay.
For someone who's having to go through the alternate need process, it's actually that same pot of funding that we use for those students, our institutional funds. So it's unlikely we would require the same formal appeal because it's not a federal process. We don't always have to document it in the same way.
Sure.
No one is scrutinizing it quite so much when it's our own money. So we might ask for that, but probably we would be asking for that same kind of information, whether it's on the form or not. Here's what's going on with me. Here's what I'm trying to do, and so forth.
Okay. So obviously, what I'm hearing is that no matter what, the student needs to either have filled out, obviously, the FAFSA, because that's the traditional process. And if not the FAFSA, then the alternate need for consideration for any additional pots of money that may be out there in general. In general. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Beautiful. That's great information. Thank you so much. We have two more questions.
Sure.
It's a two-parter, so I'm going to start with the first one.
Very good.
We have a lot of students, particularly during the pandemic, who have used that SU grades for coursework. And the question is, does receiving an SU grade jeopardize my SAP? And
so I'll have to debate how honest to be, but now that I've said that, I have to be honest. That's me tricking myself into being very forthcoming. The short answer is chances are very good that it will not negatively impact you. But believe it or not, there is a little bit of a federal flexibility in the sense that depending on institutional policy, pass-fail courses, that because there's not a traditional grade point associated with it, those outcomes can be eliminated from consideration when we're calculating a grade point.
Okay.
For whatever reason, don't tell me when I said this, no, but there are some things in the system and how it was programmed that actually seem to count in some cases unsatisfactorily completed courses, which we would think of as an F, as successfully completed. So yeah, so that is a little programming blip that may favor you. We're not going to go back and scrutinize every case. We're relying on the system to do that calculation for us. So yeah, the chances are very good it will not hurt you. And I don't think that flexibility is likely to be extended into the coming academic year, but I know it still exists for now. And by all means, talk to your professor if you think you're struggling, but can still complete the course. I know this is only adjacent to what you're asking, but I didn't really mention it previously. Incompletes can be a difficult thing in some cases because we're going to look at that as a course not completed, and so it can negatively impact meeting those SAP criteria. But at the same time, if you're working with your professor and you have every reason to believe that you can't actually complete that coursework, even if having a bunch of incompletes might push you out of SAP status, if a month later you do complete those courses and get Bs in the coursework, well, next time we do our review, you're back in good standing. Look at that. So they're not necessarily bad. If, and this is always the if you believe you can successfully complete whatever coursework is being delayed and that professor is going to work with you through that. So incompletes are not necessarily bad.
Good. Okay. The second part of the question, which we have a lot of students ask as well, is the impact of their fall semester or spring semester on the Millennial Scholarship, and what happens if they didn't meet that criteria and what that looks like. What should they be aware of?
And this, even as much as I prepare it, there are still things I am learning about UNLV and Nevada. One of them is Millennium, but there is a little bit of grace. A student can obtain a strike. And then after that time, Millennium is lost.
Okay.
Millennium there's not a lot of flexibility or forgiveness in that program, unfortunately.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the strike is? What does that mean? So if I didn't do well in the semester, do I get a letter in the mail, an email? Does your office contact me? What does that look like?
You might hear it from us. You might also hear it from the state. Usually, again, it's kind of one bad time constitutes a strike, and I don't believe they allow for a second. And in fact, I might ask Dr. Marrero, for those who registered today, if I wanted to send some follow-up information on that. Yeah. Is that something I could forward to Harriet or you for distribution?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we had a message from Debbie Patney, who's one of our advisors. And she says that as long as a student has had 1 B+ and 12 credits, they should be in good standing for the Millennium.
That's probably true, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They're also very firm about that 12 credits. So it isn't just grades.
Yes, okay. So if they have any questions about the Millennium, should they be proactive and contact your office?
Sure, always. I would always encourage that. But I think I'm going to see if I can also just gather a couple of general pieces of info to send. There's a great flyer that talks about it that the state produces. Yes. And some other info, then we can forward that to folks here.
Perfect.
That would be great. That would really be great.
I think that would be good under normal circumstances, but I am just always cognizant of my newness. And I don't want to let my history at other institutions taint what I tell you here and then misinform a bunch of people.
Yes. We also have some more questions from some of our participants. So
Great.
I'm just going to read it. This is from Miss Kathy. This is, I am in between coming back full-time or half-time, depending on the availability of online classes. I use FAFSA and I wanted to know that if I do half-time, will I lose eligibility over time for taking longer than a full-time student? And also, as a returning student, are there any other scholarships available?
I'll go to part 1 first. Effectively, no. You might recall early on I talked about the federal Pell Grant. I don't know if you're receiving that, of course, but if you are, it is prorated so that it will be about half of your individual maximum grant if you're enrolled half-time. But I also mentioned there's a limitation on Pell. That limitation is actually the equivalent of 6 years of attending full-time. So if you're attending half-time, it's 12 years of attending half-time. So just like they prorate the dollar amount, they also prorate based on your enrollment so that there's no kind of penalty for taking a smaller course load if that's what you need to do. Again, with loans, as long as you're half-time, if you are borrowing or interested in it, you would need to be half-time to be able to do it. It is always possible, though, if you are borrowing, that you could run up against that lifetime limit, depending on how much and for how many years you are borrowing. And there are no outs on that one, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. For your second question, so the short answer is yes. There are some scholarships that we offer that tend to be offered sort of at the time of admission. So it's not like brand new clean slate every year that you're here. But some, especially those that are more based on financial needs, we would consider students from year to year. So if my main encouragement would be apply on or as close to October 1st for the following year as you can. And I know it's a really long time, so we would be talking about this coming October 1st for fall of 2022. So we're doing a lot of very proactive planning when doing that, but generally our deadlines are going to be November 1st for priority consideration. And I will stress that some funds run out even before then. In fact, we heard from a student recently who expected they would qualify for a particular scholarship. And they did. They actually met the requirements for that scholarship, but we received their FAFSA information October 14th, and those funds were already spent. So sometimes it can go fast.
And on a separate note too, a lot of the individual colleges will have their own scholarships available.
Yes, thank you for saying that.
They also do require that you have your FAFSA on file or your alternate needs form, because that's the primary screening process that most colleges use. So always check with your major, your college, and your department as well. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Goodwin? Now is your time.
Thank you for saying that, Dr. Moreira, because in addition to us having some discretionary funds, yes, everyone else has some too. So we may be able to direct you to someone if you're not sure who to talk to, but.
Mm-hmm. Then we have Natalie reminding everyone that CSUN scholarships are also available, because that's another source of funding as well. And Lainey had a question about the alternative need determination form. Is it still open? Is it available currently?
The process is still open. And I don't know if you happen to be enrolled in this current summer term or not. If you are, and that's something that you're trying to seek aid for to help you with, the College Board, and we use their materials essentially to gather the information we need. They have closed the process for the 2020-21 academic year, which includes our summer. So please do the 2021-22, do the one for next year. When you submit the materials, you would just need to please tell us, in addition to next year, please also consider me for funds for this current summer term. All I would stress, though, is that we have some limitations on when we can pay funds from this current year, which includes summer, and that is generally going to be June 30th as the last day we can do that. So if you are enrolled for summer and you're looking for summer funding, just please make sure you do that ASAP, so that you can get it to us with a little buffer built in so we can look at it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Zach. You have provided us with such wonderful information and a lot of great hope for a lot of our students and staff as we're here listening to you and getting to know you. Welcome to UNLV. I hope that this isn't crazy, and just drink lots of water.
It's good advice. I will say I came from the opposite of Nevada. We moved here most recently from Vermont. Oh, wow. So we went from green and lots of foliage and lakes to desert. So it's been very different, but I'm loving being here. And thank you so much for letting us participate in this. Harriet, I will follow up with you for some additional information for our participants.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
As Dr. M said, you gave a lot of information for us too. As we're helping students navigate various processes. So I really appreciate this. And I know that it was very helpful to the students who are on this call this morning. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
And welcome to UNLV in the heat.
Thank you all, and I hope it's a wonderful rest of the day.
Yeah, same to you too.
I'll stop sharing now and give it back to you.
Perfect. And we are going to segue now to our wonderful team of advisors. We have Miss Debbie Patney, Miss Nancy Esposito, and Mr. Jaime Carvajal. They are here to answer all of your questions regarding your academics. Thank you guys for being here this morning and joining us. We look so forward to all the information you're going to be sharing with us. And in helping Miss Natalie, I know you've heard me talk about her on numerous occasions, but in helping her see her vision come to life, she really wanted an opportunity to help other students and thought that you guys would be amazing in helping in this process. So I'll turn it over to Miss Debbie or Nancy or Jaime, whoever would like to take it over, and thank you so much.
Thank you all for having us. It's so great to see a number of students that are dedicated to returning to good academic standing, and we hope that the advising information that we share to you can help you along your journey. So let me just get set up here and share my screen. Let me see, sorry, too many windows.
I hate when that happens.
Right, I know, and there's so many platforms that you have to learn to navigate, and they're all so different. All right, so okay, there we are. I will get us started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the advising portion of the Back on Track seminar. I am Nancy Esposito. I am one of the retention coordinators and academic advisors in the College of Education. And like Dr. M said, I'm joined today by Jaime Carbajal, who is also a retention coordinator and advisor in the Division of Health Sciences, and Debbie, also a retention coordinator and advisor in the College of Liberal Arts. So to get us started, I just wanted to make sure that we all have a shared understanding of what academic probation is. Now, we're all familiar with the concept of a GPA, or a grade point average, right? It was used in high school and we use it in college as well. It's the average of all of your UNLV grades. And your GPA is used to determine your academic standing. And when we say academic standing, we refer to whether or not you are meeting the GPA requirement that is set forth by your university, your college, or your major. So we say that you are on good academic standing if you are meeting the GPA requirement. If you are not, then you are said to be on academic probation, on continued probation if you've been on probation for more than one semester, or on academic suspension. Now, there's different types of academic probation that you can be on. The first one is university probation, which you are placed on if you are not meeting UNLV's minimum GPA requirement of a 2.0. Now, your college and your major may also have their own requirements as far as your GPA and your grades go. For example, the College of Education requires all of its students to maintain a 2.75 GPA, which is much, much higher than UNLV's minimum GPA requirement of a 2.0. And students in the College of Education who are unable to maintain a 2.75 GPA are placed on what we call college probation, meaning they are not meeting their college's GPA requirement. Some majors may also have their own GPA requirement or grade requirements. Again, for example, the College of Education's Human Services major requires that all of its students earn a B or higher, not a B minus, in all of their major courses in order for them to be considered passing. So it's really important that you understand the GPA and grade requirements that are set forth by UNLV, by your individual college, and by your individual major, so that you know what you're aiming for in order to maintain good academic standing. And as academic advisors, one of the questions that we get all of the time from students who are on probation is, if I'm on probation and I don't improve, will I be suspended from UNLV? And the question to that is possibly, but academic suspension is really a worst case scenario. So academic suspension is calculated slightly different than how we calculate, how we use GPA to determine whether students are placed on probation. To calculate academic suspension, we use something that's called a grade point balance, or a GPB. And a grade point balance tells us how far above or below you are from the target GPA. So for every grade that you get, you earn a set number of points. And those points will tell us if you are in the positive. So anything above a C means you get positive points. If you earn anything below a C, you get negative points. So your GPB tells us, are you above the target GPA in the positive, or are you below the target GPA and in the negative? Now, like probation, there are different types of suspension that you can be on. University suspension is when UNLV suspends you because you have a negative 15 GPB. So in other words, you are 15 points below the 2.0 GPA that's required by UNLV. And so if you look at the chart on the bottom left, you can see that for every F that you earn, you get -2 points. So in order to get the -15 GPB to qualify for suspension, you'd have to earn at least like 7 or 8 Fs, maybe more, right? Which is a lot. And by the time you get to that point, we hope that you would have connected with your advisor or have connected with resources that will help you turn things around before you get to that point. So that's why we say academic suspension is really a worst case scenario. I mean, you'd have to really be doing some serious damage to your academic record to be considered for suspension from UNLV. If you are suspended from UNLV, you are unable to take classes at our university for 1 full year. But know that students who have just completed their first semester at UNLV are exempt from suspension. So you can't be suspended after your first semester. Now, some colleges and majors also have their own suspension policies. So again, it's really important to familiarize yourself with what is required of you within your individual college and your individual major. For example, the College of Education, if you remember, I mentioned earlier that it requires students to maintain a 2.75 GPA. Well, if those students ever fall below a 2.5, they can be suspended from their College of Education major, meaning they cannot pursue any major that is within the College of Education. So again, it's really important to understand how your major works, how your college works, so that you understand what their policies are, what their practices are, and so that you understand what they expect from you as a student. So now I'm going to turn it over to Debbie, who's going to talk about how probation and suspension can impact your academic progress.
Okay, so I'm going to jump around on the slide a little bit because some of these things were covered really well by Zach talking about SAP. So first I just wanted to start with, I'm on probation. Generally, when you reach this status in your academics, you'll get an email or you'll be part of an appointment campaign from your academic advisor. I generally send those out right away and says, make an appointment and meet with me. And that's because we want to assess what the impact is going to be for you in particular. So every situation is pretty unique and it depends on what happened. Especially like during COVID, people had different things happening in their lives, dropping classes and grades wise. So we want to talk about the impact on your particular progress. And when this happens, we want to inform you because generally you're going to have a discussion with someone in your family. I was that mom when my son was on probation and I thought he was suspended. I didn't know. I didn't work at UNLV. I had no idea. So I wanted to know exactly what that meant. So first of all, the real issue is just your GPA at that point. You're below a 2.0, you're on academic probation and you are not suspended. So that's all it really means. However, it could affect things that are really important to progress. That might be your SAP. And if you are below a 2.0, then 1/2 of the requirements to keep your financial aid is being affected already. It's possible that your completion rate, which Zach also talked about, is also being affected. And so we want to talk to you to help you with that. But you do get the warning semester, which he mentioned. So right away, we want to assure you that if you do certain things, you might not lose your financial aid, you might just go right back into good standing. However, some colleges also not only just want you by invitation, please come meet with us so we can talk to you. They also might put a hold on letting you enroll for the next semester. And when I worked in the Academic Success Center, we did that because we wanted you to not keep digging the hole, take classes you weren't really prepared for. We wanted you to maybe repeat a class or do something different. So some colleges will actually put a hold on your registration in order to help you and kind of force you to get the information. But in general, we just want students to talk to us. But then if students don't meet with their advisor or they don't change things, then after a semester of probation, so being below the 2.0, and a warning for their SAP or a warning for their GPA, they might continue, as Nancy said, getting grades that are not going to help them. So below the C, below a 2.0, and they might end up getting suspended. So they're protected from suspension for one semester, but the second semester, they might not turn it around. They might get suspended. But we want to tell students before that happens how to fix this so that they can progress. So what can they do? And it depends on every student. Every student has a very different situation. So just meet with your advisor and talk about your specific circumstances so we can figure out what would work for you. One thing that students can do, generally if it's just 1 or 2 failed grades early on, is just take the class again. They have to take it at UNLV. They can't go to CSN or Nevada State and take that class. But if they take it over, the repeat policy is that they can get the second grade to replace the first grade in their GPA calculation. So if they got an F the first time and they take it again, and they should, because they generally have the book and they know part of the material, maybe they just got sick and couldn't finish the class. If they get an A or a B or something the second time, then that grade immediately when they finish the semester and a report is run by the registrar, their GPA will go back up. So the repeat policy is something that most students just right away, we tell them take that class over. Many of the majors in our college require a C- or better for them to get passing on that. So if they take it, get a D and they take it over, then not only is their GPA going to improve, they're going to meet the requirement. So generally they do that anyways. However, I've been meeting with students that are on academic probation and suspension this last week, and many students got COVID. They got sick, or someone in their family was sick, or other things happened. So if they meet with me and I can find out what really happened, I can also recommend if it's if they have documentation, so medical documentation, some kind of discharge slip from hospital or care, we can petition and help them through that process. And what that does is it might remove that whole semester of grades, which if it's a lot of D's and F's, could put them back into good standing. That process takes time. I usually have them work on it and then send it to me so I can read their letter, check out their documentation, and help them make sure before they send it that they might have a better chance. So there are other things that we can do if we know what happened. However, if a college does also restrict enrollment, they've had a couple semesters on probation, they may not be able to progress in their major at all. Like they may be looking for a new major. In the College of Liberal Arts, that's often nursing students or pre-nursing students, and they can't progress, or biology pre-professional students. And then they come to meet with us and they become a psych major. So they can continue taking the classes that they might need to still be able to look into a career that they wanted, but they just can't do it in the major they were originally in. So maybe it's a matter of recommending another major. So we have abilities to take care of students, maybe a different path. Also, Jaime is going to talk more about the resources that students can take advantage of, but I find students often just don't know how to ask for help. They don't know that their tuition is paying for free tutoring. Why? Because it costs money when they were not UNLV students. But the Academic Success Center and the Engineering College and a lot of places, the math department, have free tutoring for classes that students need help with. And I'm always going to say, okay, time management was your issue, not your inability to do school. So maybe you need to go get some help with how to manage your time and balancing your priorities. Maybe you just need to get a math tutor. Like, there are ways for you to do better the second time, especially if you're repeating a class that you just took for a higher grade. So these are a lot of the things that we discuss when a student does respond and says, I need to meet with my advisor. I want to do better. These things happen to me. So generally, just by meeting with your advisor, you're going to be able to come up with a plan, whether it's financial aid, how to get back in good shape, Millennium Scholarship, other types of scholarships. We do have a lot of information if we know what really you need help with. So if you're recommending to students, just make an appointment with your advisor. Tell them what happened. We'll figure out what to do next.
Debbie, if you could talk to us a little bit about when, because we always have students who might not be doing well in a class, and then they're not sure if they're going to pass it or fail it. So when should they come in and talk to you, and what should they have prepared? We love to tell our students, go as early as possible and have all your questions ready. No matter how embarrassed or ashamed you might feel, we're here to help you. So could you talk a little bit about the when and the importance of those emails that some of them like to not look at?
Yes, I find that during the summer, students don't check their Rebel mail. So I've started sending because we are worried about privacy, so one thing is we have to respect that. But I've been sending emails to students, personal email that says, please check your Rebel mail. I've got important news for you, especially with the SU grade policy.
Yeah.
We wanted them to take advantage of it if they needed to change a bunch of Fs to Us and then make an appointment. Generally, there's no bad time to meet with an advisor. Most advising centers are fully staffed right now, and so we can accommodate. Summer is actually the best time because you just finished spring, you've got some questions for fall. Even if you're suspended, I'm going to usually recommend students keep in touch with me during the summer and recommend they take classes at CSN if they're not able to be at UNLV. So we want students to meet with us anytime for any reason, even if they're not prepared, because the best thing is we'll tell them, here's what you can do if you want to make an appointment, or email me, follow up. But it's not like once a semester is a very good plan all by itself. Freshmen that come in have, we have a system in our program, in our Campus Connect program, that sends out early alerts. So professors in those English, first year seminars, math, etc., send alerts. And part of the job that Jaime, Nancy, and I have as RPC coordinators is to respond to those early alerts. This is a couple weeks in. They haven't attended class for 2 whole weeks. And I'm going to call you, and if you answer the phone, I'm going to find out. And sometimes I find out a student didn't have their textbook. They didn't know how to get on Canvas. They didn't know the class started, like really simple things for us, but really not great for them. And we can usually communicate with the professor. And I know in our college, most professors have let me know, I'll allow them to turn in a late assignment. So as long as a student just checks in at any point, at any time, we can generally help them a lot more.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And if I may add something, as soon as a student knows that it is not going well, that is a great internal check. That is a nudge that to yourself, from yourself, that says, hey, maybe I need to talk to somebody because things are not going as well as I expected. And you don't need to see an F grade to let that be that hunch that tells you I need to see my advisor. As I feel like along the way, students already know that things are going well. They already know that they've missed 1 too many assignments. They already know that they've missed a couple of quizzes. So as soon as you know that things are not going as well as you expected, it is a great time to check in with your advisor, just in case we have some options, some recommendations to help you turn things back around, because it can be too late, right? After you earn the F, your options are very, very limited, as opposed to checking in during week 3 or week 5 or even midterms. During the semester, there are so many options if you just check in early. But like Debbie said, even after that F post, it is always a good time to check in with your advisor. Like, there's always plenty of opportunity to turn things around, but the earlier, the better.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Yeah, and that's definitely one thing that we always talk about is we let students know that the sooner you can come and communicate with us in advising, the better we can assist you. Most importantly, we'd like to say as well too, we were students as well. And some of us have often experienced some things that maybe you all have experienced. For example, for me, I was studying civil engineering. I got an academic probation, had to change my major. I found sociology, got my bachelor's degree, followed up with my master's, went into higher education. And right now I'm currently working on my PhD. So we as students have encountered challenges as well too, or we as professionals, but when we were students encounter them. And with our experiences, not only are we able to kind of learn more about options that can share with you, but also find resources and opportunities. So know if you are one of those students that do encounter challenges, there are different options available to you. Earlier, they talked about financial aid appeals, which is a very great and helpful thing to do if you have the opportunity for that. Worst case scenario, they may say it's not approved, but at least you went and tried to check into that as a possible option. Another thing we often recommend for, our new students who've just had one or a few semesters, or even a semester that did not go as well as you thought, there is an option for a late withdrawal appeal where students can go ahead and request for a whole semester to get removed off of your academic transcript. And what that can help out with is working to increase your GPA. It can help you with getting like a fresh start from that semester. And it's a good way to kind of show like initiative and saying that, hey, I know I did not do well. If there's an extenuating circumstances or valid reasoning, a lot of the faculty senate committee or committees that review these appeals can relate and understand those challenges and difficulties experienced. So it's very important to go and talk about that. And if for some reason any students do get suspended from the university, there is the early reinstatement appeal, where if a student is suspended, they can appeal to return immediately from suspension, or if they take a semester off, kind of recalibrate, get things in order with like life, work, school, family, everything, then there is the possibility to return early from suspension. So those are a few options that we do have available. And then next slide. The other important part that we like to highlight to students is that there are support services on campus. We as advisors on campus, we meet with different departments, usually like once a month, or we get information from departments about once a month. And these are to help us increase our backpack. So that way we're able to help you as students with knowing resources and staying current with different opportunities that are available to you to utilize to help you definitely rebound from maybe some unfortunate semesters. One helpful area is academic success coaching, where you as a student can go and partner with a graduate student, either in a workshop or one-on-one. And you can definitely talk about what's going on in life. You can either talk about personal things, you can talk about like academic, you can talk about like your learning strategies, and you can be like, hey, to be honest, I'm a procrastinator. I wait till the very last minute to do my assignments. And what they can help you do is find ways and strategies to find what can work for you to be successful in helping you with being good within your classes and getting on top, because you may do well in a semester, but then a next semester may come, and it is kind of a constant adapting opportunity that can come to help you out. So academic success coaching is one thing we highly recommend to students. There's also student counseling and psychological services, where they definitely can come to help you out as far as to address any mental health concerns or any life challenges you may be experiencing. So the university has well-rounded areas, not only academically, but your well-being, because if your well-being is not being taken care of, whether it's your mental health or personal, that can come to impact how you're doing with your classes and everything. So that is a valuable resource that you have an opportunity to go and utilize. And then also career services on campus. So let's say, for example, you have an end goal and you want to go and work in a certain field, but you're not sure how to get there, or you're even not sure what you would be great at. Career services has like skill assessments and career assessments that you can go and utilize to find out what may be a good thing that you would want to do. Maybe you're a people person and they can help recommend areas that you can work with. That is something they can do on top of helping you out with any type of opportunities for careers, interview preparation, resume building, and helping you in case you're looking for any funding opportunities to help support your education. But most importantly, in case we have not said that enough today, definitely speak with your academic advisor. A lot of us have been in advising for many, many years, and we love what we do. And it's great on what we do because we feel it's a valuable tool that can not only help make your college experience a lot better than maybe how we had it, but also make it a lot easier. And like I said, we're human as well. We've experienced pros or the goods, the not so goods, the great opportunities, and what really helps us out the most and we look forward to is helping you all to be successful. So that is very important on why we say connect with an advisor as soon as possible. And most importantly, we always like to say, what questions do you have right now that we can help you out with? And then also don't forget to connect with your academic advising center. So that way we can help either point you in the right direction or get you good resources and information to help you continue to be successful at UNLV. So thanks for listening to our presentation. We do have time for questions.
Hey. I have some, I admire all the work that you do, and being here is just wonderful, and we greatly appreciate having you. You've shared so much great information. I'm still trying to process all what that means. So my first question is, we learned that we have 3 different kinds of probation that a student can encounter, and that the best place to find out which one you're on or which one impacts you the most at the time is to see your academic advisor. And you also provided a grid that had the point spread of what your balance would be. Is there like an automatic calculator if my math skills aren't where they need to be to calculate what that might look like? Is that something that my advisor can help me with to plot that out to see, this semester you need to get this grade, this grade, this grade to bring you back up? And how long would that take? Like if I have all Fs in one semester because things happened, how long can I anticipate that I can get them back up to making satisfactory progress? I know those are a lot and I apologize.
I have a resource that's really convenient. I used to work at the Academic Success Center where students who were basically failed out of their college or their major or couldn't qualify for that ended up there. So they have a great resource, which is on the UNLV Academic Success Center advising page. And it's a very interactive GPA calculator. So just if you want to play around with what would happen if I took this class over and got this grade, or what would happen if I got these grades removed or whatever, you can do that yourself. It's a really useful and easy calculator that doesn't help you with the grade point balance. But I believe on the UNLV catalog, there's also a good description of how to use the GPA calculation. All of the degree sheets in our college automatically calculate that for students. And if they meet with us, we're able to do the what if with them and also then say what would happen, right? It's like I can do it right on the Google Sheet for the student. So yeah, generally their advisor can help them with the GPA and GPB calculations.
Beautiful. And thank you, Jaime, for giving us that link. Make sure you check your chat box because we have the links in there that you'll be able to get your GPA calculator and find out where it goes. As we get a lot of students who want that immediate relief to it. So realistically, if I did very poorly in a semester, I know it's going to take me some time, but what does that time kind of look like for the typical student to get back up to satisfactory progress? Not necessarily a 4.0, but above a 2.75, let's say.
I could answer that because I just met with like 4 students yesterday, and one of them got 3 Fs and a D and didn't change them to U's or SU's in time. However, she's going to petition, but that's going to take time. And in the immediate, she's going to enroll for the fall to just retake every one of those classes. So she got COVID, so she knows why she didn't do well. She can do well. Obviously now she's healthy. So she can get her 2.0. She'll actually get up to a 3.0 when we calculated it at the end of the fall. So it doesn't have to take as long if it was one semester. If she didn't lose her financial aid because she's on that warning. However, it still could affect her percentage of completion rate for financial aid. So we'll see. She may have to petition that, but just for the GPA, it doesn't have to take a long time if you meet with your advisor like the next semester to figure out what's the right plan.
Thank you so
And
much.
if I may add something, like Debbie had mentioned in her portion of the presentation, the quickest and easiest way to repair your GPA is by repeating classes, right? Because what that allows you to do is to remove that D or that F that is bringing down your GPA to begin with. So it's almost like it was never there, which is fantastic. But sometimes I think students get frustrated with how slowly their GPA can improve.
Yeah.
Right. And so the way I like to, it's very quick coming down, but trying to bring that up is slow sometimes and it can be really frustrating. But the way I like to explain it to students is if you're a student who has a low GPA and you've already completed 60 credits or 2 full years at UNLV, right? The 12 credits, so the 4 classes that you're taking in one semester, even if you earn all A's, they're battling against 60 credits that are already creating and anchoring your low GPA. So the 12 credits against the 60 credits that you already have, right? Visually, you can kind of visualize what a slow impact those 12 credits against the 60 would make. So it's a slow process, but it's not impossible. Right? So just be patient with yourself and with your process, and every A and B that you can earn is a step in the right direction.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we have talked a little bit about these pass-fail grades. Can we share, like we have some students who come into our office who say, well, I used the pass-fail, so I passed, and I'm going to register for the next level up. Can you talk a little bit about when you are a student and you had to use your pass-fail option and misleading yourself into thinking that you're ready for that next class when it was really the grading system and the help that the university gave students that might have pushed you over that line? Does that make sense?
Yes. I think Debbie also mentioned this earlier in terms of what is the reason for why you earned a low grade? Was it because there were extenuating circumstances that have then just disappeared and you're in a better place now? Was it a one-time thing? Was it a personal crisis? Was it just your lack of time management skills? Or was it really that the content in your class was a lot, right? It was more than you could understand and grasp. So when you think about earning a low grade and taking the SU, you want to be realistic about your level of confidence and knowledge and your skill to be successful in the next level course. If it was something just one time crisis or a pandemic that we never thought we'd experience in our lifetime, but we did, and now hopefully that's kind of behind us. If that was the reason why you earned a low grade, but you feel confident enough, you feel like you learned enough, and you feel good about your abilities to be successful in the next level up, then by all means, move forward, right? But if you feel like you may have missed too much of the content, like you needed to learn more, you're feeling a little shaky about how well you can do in the next level up, you can still take the SU to protect your GPA, but you might want to consider taking that class again, not because you have to, but maybe because there are still skills and knowledge that you need to gain before you can move forward. And I've had these conversations with some students, and sometimes I'm really, really proud of the mature decisions that they make, because even though they technically passed the class because of the SU, they made a personal decision to retake the class because they feel like they missed a lot of content, they have some knowledge gaps, and they don't want to jeopardize their success in the next level class. And it really is a very personal decision for the students.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and if it's okay, I would like to add a little more to what Nancy had mentioned, especially with certain students who are in certain programs that are very either competitive to get into, like for us in health sciences, it's competitive to get into like the nursing or the nutrition programs or the ultrasound and radiography programs. And our classes do start to build upon each other. Same with other majors like in sciences, engineering. And if you don't have that good foundation, then the next class, not only would it be challenging to learn that new content, but you're also playing catch up with all the previous content that you had just passed using the SU grading. So ultimate end goal is definitely to make sure that we help you stay on track and help you graduate, and regardless of the time. Yes, we know there's life circumstances and work and other things that may go into that, but we want to make sure that we help you to be best prepared to take on that next class. And that's where we help out with those discussions and conversations in advising.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Dr. Marrero, could I add one thing to that students that are listening may not really think about at the time that their GPAs? They might not be thinking about getting into grad school. For us, it's law school and med school, often for our liberal arts majors. So even though they get pass fail, so generally a pass, so it was a D- and now they passed, that didn't help their GPA because it didn't give them the grades toward their GPA. So then the same thing that Nancy mentioned about, they might make the decision to take it over so they really learn the content. They may do the pass fail temporarily to keep their scholarships or something, but when it comes to getting their GPA high enough to go to law school, you know, I'm already looking at, well, you might be okay with this GPA here and you'll graduate with your degree, but you're not going to law school because you need a minimum GPA. And so we do try to help them to the next step, because it's really motivating to know that if I just take that over this time, I know what to expect, and then keep them prepared and keep that door open for grad school. Because you know, a lot of them are thinking that way. They just don't really know what to do. So it's not just a short term, it's also a long-term decision.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that, Ms. Patney, because that is so true. We don't think about the long term, and we don't have those discussions every day. So having that knowledge and information in our toolbox is really, really useful. Thank you so much. I'd like to segue. Does anybody have any questions? Because I feel like I am hogging your time, but okay. I have a question for Jaime. Jaime, you were so kind enough to share your experiences changing your major when you changed from engineering to, I think you said sociology. If you could share a little bit with us about what that process was like and how you came to that decision, because I feel, as you all have mentioned, that you see students who have the interest and the skills, but it might not be the right fit, and they don't know how to make that pivot or the transition, or sometimes they're forced by their major to make a transition. So if you could share a little bit with us about that process, if you'd be so kind, that would be grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love sharing my story with students, just to kind of showing that overcoming obstacles type of element. And with me, I was studying civil engineering. I was 4 years in, not even halfway through, had to repeat calculus 1, calculus 2, physics, chemistry multiple times. And I was very stubborn, especially with my background, being first generation student. And it was challenging at first because I did not want to give up. And I was like, no, I want to become an engineer. I was good in math in high school. How come I'm not doing well in college? What really came to be a resource to me was a lot of the connections I had made with some of the faculty members and administrators at my institution. And one thing that happened was I got referred by the director of the Chicano-Hispano Student Affairs Center. And she's like, go talk with this advisor over here within sociology. You've taken some classes, you said that interests you. So I went and I was able to go and make a connection with that advisor. And they said, okay, these classes can go and transfer for this new major. This is what you would have remaining. And we were able to kind of go and discuss more future career possibilities. So It was scary and daunting at first, but once I got to kind of get communicating with my advisor, give it a chance. And after that first semester, I was able to jump back up. And for the semester, I was able to get on the dean's list and realize, hey, I like these classes a lot better than what I was doing before. Like, why didn't I do this sooner? That was really when the light bulb had clicked. And I started to get connected to more people just from recommendations and references from my advisor. And it was wonderful because not only did it start to lead to more opportunities at my institution, but it also got me thinking about, hey, what about possible graduate school and ways and opportunities to go and get there. So it can be scary. I think the toughest part is opening up and saying everything that you had going on. For me, I was working a 40-hour job. I was taking 16, 17 credits, heavily involved on campus, kind of had way too much going on. But starting to break things down and communicate with different faculty, different advisors, and different people on campus is really what helped me. And I think that helped me realize, hey, I am human. Mistakes and opportunities are there. And for me to realize that, you know, there are options and there's great things that can definitely come from these challenges. So I had a lot of blessings in disguise that were very helpful, and being able to share that and tell students that is awesome. And that's kind of what I like to reaffirm and tell students, is that there are opportunities, and it's the more you let us know, we don't judge. We can definitely come to help you out with seeing what we can do to help work with you on a path and a career and an opportunity that can work for them.
Mhm. Thank you so much. That's a message that we always need to hear, because, you know, things happen. And I know for me, I'm also first gen, and, you know, my parents are like, I want you to be an accounting major, and math was not my strong suit. And I was like, you know, I appreciate that you want me to do that, but I can't. And so having that conversation was very, very hard for me. And I was able to change from math to English, because English was my passion. So thank you for sharing that, because it's people don't talk about how challenging it is when you're first gen and you don't have that information. You don't have a family to be able to share those ideas with. And so you kind of listen to your friends, and you were fortunate to have mentors in your life that were able to help that. I didn't have that at the time. So I was doing a lot of self-advising and listening to my friends, which I shouldn't have done. So my journey was a lot longer. And so I use that to advise my students, like, do not self-advise. Please go see an advisor and go talk to some other people that do not include your immediate friends. And so, you know, because I had to learn that the hard way, I like to share that too. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
So students, do we have any other questions for our wonderful panel who's here today to answer anything that you might have? Okay, do our panelists, do you have any famous last words of advice that you'd like to bestow on us? Because we are attentive. We're like taking all of this in.
Definitely don't self-advise, and don't listen to your friends,
Yes.
at least not when it comes to academics, because I had a similar experience, Dr. M, where I had received a letter from when I was a freshman in my undergraduate institution in California, that it was a warning letter, right? That said I was on probation because I wasn't doing well. And it said, if you don't do well the next semester, you are at risk of being suspended. And well, I didn't do well the following semester anyway. So what I took that to mean is, well, you've been suspended. And I never took the time to ask or double check. And little did I know, I had not been suspended. I had done not great, but well enough to not have been suspended. But I self-diagnosed, or I don't know what you would term it, but I pretty much self-advised myself and told myself I had been suspended when I truly had not been. And I had lost a lot of valuable time because I didn't check and I didn't speak to anybody. So definitely just be really mindful. And we have great intentions, and your friends have great intentions, but you want to make sure that you're getting the information directly from the source.
Yes, thank you. Beautiful. Miss Patney.
Well, we put a little quote on our slide, and we're very intentional about the messaging. And the reason is that students, when these things happen, this is just things like this happen in our life, right? We get in a car accident on the way somewhere. We don't get a job that we wanted. Things don't always work out on a straight path. students will sometimes say, well, how did you get your job? I'm like, this was actually my hobby, because I have 3 children and they all graduated from UNLV, and one of them was failing. His advisor actually said, you will never become a pharmacist. And that was enough to spur him on to say, how can I become, how can I do this? I had a daughter who wanted to be an English major, and we're like, no, you'll never get a job. She is now a librarian at CSN. She is helping lots of people where she actually went to school, and a younger one who I homeschooled. So, we have all these different experiences, but none of them are the same. And advisors, typically we're in this sort of job not because we want to recommend the classes. That's easy. You can get a degree sheet and a probation policy, repeat a class. It's so we can help you get to those scholarships for doing a great job. So we can help you into grad school. So we can tell you another way to be a teacher if you don't want to go this route. We spend a lot of time learning how things work so you don't have to do all that work. So we can tell you the shortcuts, like just let me know what you're trying to do here. So our policy is always just ask us, just pick our brains. None of us have the same degree. None of us went to the same institution. So especially those of us, I was also a first gen student and I didn't know who to ask. I didn't have an advisor. My parents did not know how to help me. As I figure things out, I will also share them. And I think that's what we do. We just share information with all of you, and then hopes that you will help your brother or sister, and then hopes that you'll be able to help someone else in your future. So, if students just make an appointment to talk to us, we literally can share whatever experiences, and that is what we are here to do. So if we can be helpful for a policy, great. If you just want to tell us about your success, tell us. It really motivates us as well to continue to help students.
Mhm. Thank you so much. How about you, Jaime? Any last words? Any words of advice that you'd like to leave us with?
I would probably have to say college is really about community. Not only did I learn that as a student, but I also learned that just growing up in life. I'm from a very small town in New Mexico, and it's one of those where the more you can help to develop a community, whether it's friends, family, faculty, advisors, the more helpful it can be. And I think that's what's kind of kept me here at UNLV for so long. I've been here 10 years. Woohoo! And I think it's great to be able to go and refer different students and be like, go talk to this person in this department, tell them I referred you, or go talk to over here, this person. Because that really not only comes to show familiarity, but I think it also helps to build that sense of belonging. And most importantly, students, you've all taken the first steps of coming here and getting your college experience started. It does take a community to help you get through it. And I know I've had my community, still helps me out for myself as a student, as a faculty member, or sorry, as an administrator here, but building that community is important. And the more I can recommend that to students, the better.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate having you. That concludes our group advising session for this morning. So presenters, thank you again for joining us. We really, really appreciate having you. We have a few more things that we're going to do with our students on the side, but they have your information and your name, so I'm sure they'll be reaching out to you for more additional information.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Okay, to our fellow participants, I'm going to share my screen just to show you what we have in store. Any words from Natalie or Dr. Barlow? Okay, so I'm going to share just 2 or 3 screens to conclude our session for today, and then Natalie is going to have some prizes to award our attendees. So give me one quick second. Okay. So for today, make sure that if you haven't already, to log on to your Canvas and look at the materials that you have there. Oops, sorry, I didn't share. Okay. And look at the materials that we have there. So you will be seeing some of the presentations that we had today. We have to download them and upload them. So they'll be there either this evening or tomorrow. But we also have materials that are going to be forms, links, and PowerPoints for you to be able to use. We have our SQR link I'm going to pull up in a second for you to complete your day 2 evaluations. And again, we will conclude our 3-day session tomorrow with the Academic Success Center that was mentioned today. And they're going to be doing some hands-on activities to answer questions that you might have about time management, how to break down projects into smaller pieces, and all of those things that we have going on. So make sure if you have not logged onto Canvas that you go ahead and do that, because we will have all of our information there. And this is your SQR code for your end of survey for the afternoon for today. So if you pull up your phone, use your camera feature to SQR that, it'll send you your item directly. And I'm going to turn it over now to Miss Natalie, who's going to give you away some great prizes that we have. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. M. So for today, we will be giving away one bookstore voucher at the value of $100 and one Rebel Cash card at $25 value. And our winners for today are Kathy for the $100 bookstore voucher.
Yay.
And Harmony for the $25 Rebel Cash card.
Beautiful. Excellent. So all of your awards and prizes can be picked up in our office starting on Friday. You will need to bring your student ID with you, and we will give you all of the goodies on that day as well. All right. Do we have any questions for me or for Natalie? Okay, I hope today's session was useful and informative. I know I learned a lot. There is always updates that happen every semester regarding your financial aid and your advising offices. So thank you, Natalie, for putting all of this together, because I thought I knew a lot and I found out that I don't know as much as I knew because things have changed. So thank you for keeping me updated. Again, tomorrow we usually log on at 9:30 just to be there in case you have any comments, questions, or concerns. But we will officially start at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Okay. All righty. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, we'll hang out for 3 or 4 more minutes, but if you are ready and you have all your questions answered, feel free to leave us. Make sure that you turn in your information and we will see you tomorrow morning. Thank you. I know Kathy had mentioned that she had to step out for about 15 minutes, so she wasn't sure if we would be back by the time she came back. And then day 2, $25. Okay, I'm just logging on all the winners so I can give them to Miss Cynthia.
Okay.
I thought there was a lot of great information today.
Yeah, it was really good.
I learned a lot.
Right. And it was like really well organized, I think. It was easy to process.
Yeah. Very happy. Okay. Well, we are concluding, so I'm just going to let Dr. Barlow know so she can stop recording. And I guess when we log off, we automatically all log off. So that'll be good. All right, Ms.